Well, good evening, and I'd like to welcome everyone and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, February the 16th. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? So today marks the easing of restrictions that we have recently been under. And while we are currently considered to be in the red zone, the lifting of restrictions makes us all feel cautiously optimistic about moving forward. The hard work that the residents of Lucan Biddulph have been putting in is paying off. And I think we can all agree that it has not been an easy last few months. As restrictions begin to ease, I would ask that our residents ease back into being out and about as well. We cannot get complacent. We still have to be mindful of how we go out. So continue to plan your strategy. Now, if you are like me, you will likely want to shop for something in person besides groceries. And as our small business retailers and services begin to reopen to actual physical customers, now is a good time to encourage everyone in Lucan Biddulph to continue to support our retailers and services. Lucan Biddulph's small businesses, retailers, and services have done such a great job pivoting to new business models in an effort to continue to keep their businesses going. Now that doors can be open and appointments made, please find a way to support our businesses in our community. On this note, I would like to offer, on behalf of Council, our congratulations to Lucan's Sealster Farms. They were recently named Canada's top breeder. This is an honor they have received 4 times in the last 15 years. The standardbred industry is a thriving industry in our area, and we want to acknowledge Sealsters for this achievement and for their continuing investment in their operations in Lucan Biddulph. Congratulations, Sealster, well done. So we need to move into a planning meeting. Didn't have one last meeting, seemed a little strange there, but we've got one tonight. So I do need a motion to adjourn our regular meeting and sit as the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. If I could get a mover and seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. And all opposed? And that is carried. So, of course, joining us is our planner, Dan Fitzgerald, and I will turn it over to him to walk us through our consent application that is in front of us this evening.
Yeah, so through the mayor to members of the committee. So the application that is before Committee of Adjustment tonight is a concurrent application with a consent and a corresponding zoning bylaw amendment application as well. So I will speak to both, although the zoning bylaw amendment will come up in the public meeting portion directly after this file. So with that said, the application for committee and council discussion tonight is a proposed severance for the purpose of disposing a surplus farm dwelling, which is the result of a farm consolidation. And before I get any further, I'm just going to share my screen so that everyone has context of the location we're referring to. So the subject property is a 41.08 hectare farm parcel that is located on the east side of Mitchell Line, southeast of the intersection at Mooresville Drive in Mitchell Line, and is municipally known as 35098 Mitchell Line. The lands are designated agricultural according to the township official plan, and are zoned general agricultural A1 in the township zoning bylaw. The applicant is requesting to sever approximately 1 hectare or 2.4 acres of land that are occupied by a single detached dwelling, a barn or accessory building, a silo, and a solar panel. The balance of the farm would have an area of approximately 40 hectares for the purposes of agricultural crop production. It should be noted to the committee that the application represents what we refer to as a reverse residence surplus to a farm operation severance, whereby the applicant would keep the residential lands and the farmland would be sold to a farmer who qualifies for a farm consolidation. The existing house is privately serviced through a well and septic system, was constructed in 1880, and maintains access from Mitchell Line. Additionally, the applicant has concurrently submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application as noted, where the owner has requested the balance of the farmland be rezoned to an agricultural A3 zone for the purpose of prohibiting any new residential use on these remnant lands, severed lands. The remnant lands are proposed to be rezoned to a surplus dwelling zone to reflect the proposed residential use of the property. The provincial policy statement, county official plan, as well as the township official plan generally do permit severances of dwellings which are considered surplus to a farming operation as a result of consolidation. The general criteria in the Lucan Biddulph official plan is as follows: that the residence was constructed prior to 1999, a new residential dwelling is prohibited on the remnant farm parcel, provisions for appropriate sewer and water services are in place, the severed parcel be limited in size and only be as large as necessary to accommodate the existing services. So in terms of the proposal, the house was built prior to 1999. The dwelling is habitable. The severed parcel would maintain private services, and staff are satisfied that the house is considered surplus to a farm operation as a result of consolidation. As a proposed reverse resident surplus to a farm operation severance, a condition has been added to the provisional consent recommendations that the lands shall transfer to Willem Bloemen of Bloemen Dairy. The proposal also seeks to maintain a portion of the existing accessory building with the remnant portion of the lands. So the remaining portion of the severed agricultural lands would be demolished and removed, including the silo would be removed as well. My understanding is that the solar panel is proposed to be relocated to the residential parcel of land. Appropriate conditions of consent have been recommended to ensure the chief building official is satisfied that the structures are adequate to be maintained as a residential use. Additionally, the accessory building would meet zoning requirements for setbacks as well as size. Planning staff are satisfied that the criteria of the proposed severance for a surplus farm residence on the lands have been met or can appropriately be addressed through conditions of consent. Staff have also received comments from various agencies during circulation, all of which were in support of the application. Conditions have been included as recommended. And as well as previously noted, the applicant is also proposing a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment where the severed and remnant lands to comply with the PPS as well as the official plan requirements. The severed lands would be rezoned to an agricultural A3 zone, prohibiting any future residents from being built on these lands, and the severed lands would be rezoned to a surplus dwelling zone to recognize the residential use of the property. This rezoning is appropriate in that the lot resulting from the consent application, which is B12021, which was heard currently, is capable of conforming to all of the other zoning requirements. Staff will require a deposited reference plan to be provided to accurately describe the limits of the land that are being rezoned. So with that said, based on the above, planning staff are recommending that consent application B1/2021, which was filed by John and Sandra Damon, to sever a parcel of land for the purpose of disposing a surplus dwelling having a lot frontage of approximately 50 meters along Mitchell Line in an area of approximately 1 hectare from a property legally described as Lot 16, Concession 9 in the Township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex, and municipally known as 35098 Mitchell Line, be granted subject to the conditions that were outlined in the report. As well, with respect to the rezoning recommendation, staff are recommending that the application for the zoning bylaw amendment, which is ZBA 3/2021, for the lands owned by John and Sandra Damon and legally described as part of Lot 16, Concession 9 in the Township of Lucan Biddulph, County of Middlesex, and municipally known as 35098 Mitchell Line, be approved, and that the implementing bylaw be forwarded to the Township Council for consideration once a deposited reference plan has been provided to the satisfaction of the Township. So thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. Now, I know that the applicant has joined us, and I don't know whether Mr. and Mrs. Damon has anything to add to that, or if there's just any questions that are directed to them. So I'll just wait a minute, and if Mr. and Mrs. Damon want to say something. If not, I'll open it up to questions from the committee. Okay, any questions from the committee on this application? So Dan, I just actually had one. I just wondered about the history of the property and if there had been a prior severance on that property before, and if there was, I was always under the impression if a piece of land had a severance, then you couldn't have another one.
Through the chair to the mayor. So if you have a severance on a property, I think what you're referring to in terms of consent, once a consent, always a consent. So there are certain situations where you can spoil the consent, thereby removing that legality in terms of wording. But that only applies to a situation where you're actually physically manipulating the lot area of the original consent, not the remnant parcel of land. And I know I kind of discussed this earlier as well, based on questions that were received. So this really is not necessarily a unique situation, I would say, across the county in general. It was likely severed off the farm, by a local council back when there was not really a formalized system of land use planning that was in place. When the lot was severed, it does appear that it was rezoned to a rural residential lot. However, the remnant ag parcel in this particular case did remain general agricultural zone, which would permit residential uses. And that's quite common, that we do see that quite often across the county. So following the creation of the provincial policy statement and the more formalized system of planning in Ontario, one of those generalized goals was to protect ag land, especially when it comes to prime agricultural land. And the PPS only now provides permissions for individuals to sever a house off the farmland, which is associated services, as long as it's considered a consolidation to some type of business transaction that's occurring in the land. So the difference today is that we do require the residential use to be rezoned to a residential zone. So in this case, you see the surplus dwelling zone that's being applied for. And the remnant land is then required to be rezoned to an agricultural no residence zone. So basically under that provision of the new, the more formalized provincial planning process, as well as our county OP and local OP, it basically limits any potential future residential parcel from actually being created on the lands. So in this particular case, as far as we can tell, it did receive a consent. You can see the little corner on the top of the property that was carved out. It did happen prior to any type of formal provincial planning policy being in place. However, that type of scenario where you sever off a chunk of land for just the purpose of building a residential house is no longer permitted. And that's kind of what you're seeing in terms of the zoning that's required in this particular instance. It basically limits the ability for an individual to create any new additional residence on the lands, but still allows them to sever off the residential portion as part of their, in many cases, as part of, retirement plans or whatever it might be.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so as Dan noted in his report, he does have a recommendation to grant the consent application. And so at this time, I would entertain a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Westman and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. That's good. Thank you. So just on that, usually we have to come in and sign for the consent, but we don't anymore because you've got our electronic signatures. Correct, Tina? Okay. So just a reminder, you do not have to come in anymore to sign that. Okay. So now we just need a motion to adjourn our committee of adjustment and reconvene or convene, excuse me, a public meeting under the Planning Act. So if I could get a mover and a seconder to make that move, Councillor Regan and Councillor Masterakis. All opposed, and that's carried. And so now we are in the public meeting. And I don't know, Dan, whether you want to say anything more about the zoning bylaw amendment application for the Damons, unless anybody has any questions on that one.
Yeah, so maybe you through the chair, Madam Mayor. So yeah, just as mentioned, this is the concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application, which would limit rezone the severed agricultural lands to an agricultural A3 zone, which would limit any residential uses being placed on the lands in the future. And the remnant residential parcel gets rezoned to a surplus dwelling zone, which then recognizes that residential use. So I won't go over the recommendation again, as previously noted, but if anyone has any questions, I can certainly answer.
So any questions on the zoning bylaw amendment? Okay, we'll deal with the motions when we come out of the public meeting on that. So we'll move on to the next one then, and this is zoning bylaw amendment application. And Dylan is a consulting agent. So I'll pass it over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor, and to members of council. The application before council tonight is a zoning bylaw amendment for the purpose of amending the existing zoning permissions in the residential third density exception, R3-6 zone, for the purpose of establishing a 44-unit townhouse development in the format of what's proposed as a vacant land condominium for the lands that are located on the south side of Nicholson Street between Beach Street and Miller Drive in the Ridge Crossing subdivision. So again, so everyone can see for context purposes, the subject property is a 1.01 hectare or 2.51 acre parcel, which is currently the subject of a site plan review application. The existing land uses surrounding the property include single detached dwellings to the north, a 54-unit townhouse development currently under construction to the east, Wilberforce Public School to the south, and a single detached residential units to the west. The lands are designated a settlement area in the county official plan, residential in the local official plan, and are zoned a third density exception holding zone, which is an R3-6-H, in the township zoning bylaw. The application is seeking to amend the existing zoning or site-specific zoning provisions in order to accommodate the proposed development of the lands currently under site plan review and to accommodate a future vacant land condominium application. The applicant is seeking the following changes to the existing zoning provisions. They're requesting relief from the rear yard setback requirement to 6 meters, relief from the exterior side yard setback requirements to 2.75 meters, relief from the maximum permitted encroachment of an uncovered deck into the rear yard at 3.1 meters, relief from the interior side yard setback of a deck to 0 meters measured vertically where 2 common walls of a unit are joined, relief from the minimum lot area requirements from 150 square meters per unit, relief from the minimum lot frontage requirement to 6.10 meters, and relief from the interior side yard setback requirement for an air conditioning unit to 0 meters between units. The provincial policy statements, county official plan, as well as township official plan do provide policy direction, which encourages development and redevelopment opportunities on full municipal services, provided that the proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. As directed in all 3 guiding policy documents, planning staff recognize the need to accommodate multiple forms of development within existing settlement boundaries, which do promote intensification on existing housing stocks. As noted in the report, the permission to construct a townhouse dwelling proposal on the land, which was previously designed to accommodate an apartment building, already exists. The application before council is more appropriately an end user exercise based on the desire of the applicant to implement a vacant land condominium on the site. As such, the reductions to the size and frontage requirements do not change the existing permissions. Rather, they allow for future ownership through a vacant land condominium as opposed to a standard condo. Staff have reviewed the requested reductions to the rear yard setbacks, interior side yard setbacks for decks, exterior side yard setbacks for the development, encroachment for the decks into the rear yard, and reductions to the required interior side yard setbacks for air conditioners, and deem them appropriate for the proposed format of development, subject to the additional requirements that are outlined in the zoning bylaw amendment. In all, subject applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and in conformity with the county and township official plans, and do represent good land use planning. The application has been circulated to the community in compliance with requirements for the Planning Act. And to date, planning staff have received 2 objections to the proposed zoning amendments. Both have been included in the planner's report in advance of tonight's meeting. Staff have also circulated the application to internal departments as well as external agencies in advance of tonight's meeting, and do note that no concerns were received. So given the above, planning staff are recommending that application for zoning bylaw amendment 02/2020, which was filed by Dillon Consulting Limited, care of Melanie Muir, on behalf of 2219260 Ontario Limited, for a property known legally as Block 103, Plan 33M739, in the township of Lucan Biddulph in the county of Middlesex, to amend a site-specific residential third density exception holding zone be approved, and that the implementing bylaw be passed as the application satisfies the requirements of the Planning Act, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, does conform to the official plans of both the township of Lucan Biddulph and the county of Middlesex, and satisfies the requirements of the township of Lucan Biddulph zoning bylaw, and also does represent good sound land use planning. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. Any questions from council at this time? Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Dan, I know that I spoke to you earlier about this with me. My concern was the 2 letters that we received. Both seem to have the same concerns about the amount of traffic, the parking that is on Gilmore, especially the we've already spoken. We've mentioned this a number of times about the traffic concerns on Gilmore. The other question too was about the school, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to those, if you have any thoughts on that. Like, what would we be? I would like to make sure that the residents' concerns are sort of brought to light here. And with respect, one of the things that we have talked about this before, and this is sort of what brought my attention to it, was the the busing of kids out, that sort of thing. I don't know, maybe do we need to, or should we be pointing this out to Thames Valley, that sort of thing? But I guess if you could speak to the traffic, the parking, and I think there was, I don't know if traffic studies have been done. I can't remember if we've done those or not.
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councillor Reagan and all council members. So I did review the concerns that were raised by the residents, and I will say that they are valid points that they are raising. However, I would note that the subdivision road network was designed to accommodate the potential traffic load for all the blocks, which are included within the broader subdivision. And the density on this particular site was originally designed to accommodate an apartment building, and associated infrastructure was also designed to accommodate the more intensive use. So I would suggest that as Saintsbury continues to be upgraded, you will see a lot of the local traffic from the area switch to using Beach Street to that larger arterial to get down much quicker into the core of Lucan, or even out of the city as well. I would also note that on this particular site, the developer is providing 2 parking stalls per unit. They are required to provide, an average of 1.5 per unit, so they are above technically the parking requirement. And As well, they are also providing 10 visitor parking stalls on the site. So the existing bylaw doesn't actually require visitor parking stalls. So they've kind of gone above and beyond what the technical bylaw requirement is in this particular case. And I would note as well that, street parking in general, we hear the concerns about congestion on street parking, especially within neighborhoods. And, street parking is universal. It's for anyone to use. So unless the municipality wants to consider passing some sort of restrictive bylaw and have bylaw enforcement out there ticketing vehicles, it is intended for universal use for anyone. So any development would be able to accommodate, or anyone using any development would be able to accommodate or use the street parking at their own leisure, based under current, bylaws within the existing township. And then with respect to the school concern that was mentioned, it's kind of much the same as above. Thames Valley took the density calculation into consideration when they did provide comments on the original ultimate population density design of the subdivision, and they've quarterly those comments have been included in the overall subdivision plans. We have also circulated Thames Valley as well as Thames Valley School Board and their planners on the site plan application. They haven't noted any concerns when it came to accommodating any existing students within the population for this particular section. I know that in the past they did notify staff that there could be concerns in the future, but that's more related to future subdivision development, so future considerations of draft plan approval. And in that case, they were more just kind of identifying to staff in a transparent manner that there could be potential for overages in the school, and they weren't necessarily saying that a holding zone would be applied. They were just kind of saying we recognize the fact that the school is getting towards the higher limits of its capacity, and any future development may require the addition of a holding zone. And when they look at development, they look at not what's already been approved in terms of draft plan conditions and final approved. They look at what's future coming forward. So those decisions aren't made by Thames Valley planning staff. They are made by the board, and certainly Lucan Township Council as well as residents could voice their concerns when it came to that eventually down the road. So I hope that has helped answer some of your questions.
You're muted, Councillor Regan.
I was just saying thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay.
Any other questions or concerns on this application? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I guess this probably for me has been the most commented development in my 12 years on council from our community. I just, I've got quite a bit to say about it, actually. It's interesting how people are commenting on it that aren't affected by it. It's not in their backyard. They're concerned on the density, the backyards, the side yards, the parking, and in general for our community. The community concern, not a personal concern, which is interesting because typically it's people commenting when it's impactful to them. And I will say one thing that Dan said that just shocks me, and I just again disappointed in, I guess, ourselves, is that it's hard to believe now when we drive by that property does not need visitor parking. I believe that's what Dan said, and I can't believe that we've got that available for a developer to do that density with no visitors, with no public transit to come to our community for visitors. And if we drive by there, that we don't have to have visitor parking, it's very disappointing to me. I don't know how we correct that for the future, but I'm more disappointed now than I was 15 minutes ago. I'm glad to see the developer on this extension is the backyards are 6 meters as opposed, provincial policies or policy, I believe 7 meters. During the plotting of this development, I believe we've shrinked it up to 5.6 because again, when developers come back to us, it always just looks like a little bit. And I think, you know, I think when we drive by, if every council member drives by this to see what we created, and when we put up our hands, how meaningful it is when we do these zoning provisions. And a zoning provision after zoning provision after zoning provision on the same development is very impactful. I'm not certainly opposed to the next step here. I'm kind of reflecting on the decisions made during this development. Like I say, now's not the time, I realize, but I can't believe that that development does not need to have visitor parking. I would like to see, when you can't maintain the provisions, maybe staff work with the developer of why they can't maintain them, the reasons behind it. Those are things I think we need to learn more on council. But anyways, one concern, which is interesting, that I've been asked a couple of times, it doesn't impact the people that are asking me, is snow removal. My understanding is we're only deal with it on the Gilmore, Lucan Biddulph, and it will be the complex that's responsible for all their snow removal. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Council. Sorry, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Manders. That is correct. So when this particular site, as a vacant land condominium, the roads in it are private. They're privately owned by the condo board, which means that they have to be serviced privately as well. So on the site plan, I did not show it, but I did include it as an attachment to the planning report. There is an identified snow storage area where they do pile up snow during the wintertime. If it does exceed that requirement, they would have to basically truck it off site to remove.
Okay. No, that was one question. That's what I thought. That straightens that out. I think that'll make, again, people happy on that. But no, I guess I'll have to, again, I'm more disappointed than I was before. Thanks, Dan. All right.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Mastarakis.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Similar question, I guess, comment on the traffic. What I've heard the concerns are, as per the letter, that if generally you have two cars with a one-car driveway and the garage is always full of things, right? So people are going to be parking on the road as much as possible. You've got young kids going to school, and it always frightens me when people dart between cars, and the speeds have been fairly high that we've been buying additional signs for speed. Also, if we're going to build a cross on the other side of Saintsbury as well, what's that going to look like? Do we need traffic lights? Do we need traffic calming? Because I've had a concern that coming into Lucan from Saintsbury towards Gilmore into town, there's a bit of a hump coming in where it's hard to see when you come over the horizon if we're going to be building out that way. So so there's concerns about how do we ensure that safety piece down the road. And I know this is on its way. It meets requirements that we put forward, but I'm concerned about a lot of kids around that school and the safety around that. So maybe traffic calming measures or something that we think ahead of on this.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I guess to kind of jump off what the Deputy Mayor was saying about the applications that seem to be always coming back. And I mean, how do we guarantee that what they're being asked of today is all they're asking for, and that we're not going to be in the same position that we are with the other townhouses that are currently being built, that they've had to come back and have amendments made? Because to the Deputy Mayor's point, I think we've learned a lot through this this subdivision and the way that it's grown. I mean, I can honestly say when it was first brought to council, I was a new councillor. I probably didn't think of the things that probably I should have asked for. And so certainly it's been, from that standpoint, I've learned a lot. So to that end, how can we say what you are asking for today, that's what you're getting?
through the Madam Mayor, to the Mayor. I don't think you're going to like my answer because technically speaking, anyone has the ability to make an application for anything they want on a parcel of land. So if someone gets zoning on a parcel and then 1 year, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, wherever it might be, plans change, they haven't developed it at that particular point in time, they want to change the zoning, they can reapply to do that. There's no technical limitations in the Planning Act that would limit your ability to make a application for a zoning bylaw amendment on a parcel of land. So even if you get denied, you can reapply for something else and down the line. The only particular instance that you're limited to is a situation where you receive an approval for zoning and then come back immediately afterwards for a minor variance application. So in that particular instance, the Planning Act does say, no, you've got to wait 2 years before you can apply for a minor variance. And that's more like, truly, I think there's situations where, in a larger subdivision, placeholder zoning, if you will call it that, is placed on particular blocks of lands, and they don't really have an idea with what they're gonna, end product design that's going to be built on that. So it is quite common for a placeholder zoning to be placed on a particular parcel of land, and then eventually, as they get to the point of where they're going to develop it in that phase of the subdivision, they come back and more seriously look at, okay, well, this is the product we want to design based on today's best practice standards, and these are the zoning standards that we would need to achieve that development. So there is good examples of it, and there are bad examples of it where someone keeps continuously coming back in and trying to ask for a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less. In this particular case, I don't think that necessarily is the concern. A lot of the provisions, like for instance, the reduction of a deck on an interior side yard is something that's quite common in cities that deal with a lot of these types of applications. So I think as you start dealing with a lot more of these applications, you kind of start seeing things that reoccur, and then you say, okay, we need to address that in a housekeeping bylaw, so that we're keeping up with today's standards of development and making sure that we're on side with what they're proposing. So things like that, certainly we would address through housekeeping bylaw. And that the situation of a deck is kind of a more unique one that's come up more recently, just based on the interpretation of how a deck is applied in Lucan Biddulph as part of the attached structure. So there are certain instances where we will identify things which would not necessitate these continuous coming back to look at rezoning. And in the situation of a rear yard setback, in this particular case, on this site, I didn't mention it before, and when Deputy Manders was discussing the rear yard setback. In this particular case, majority of the rear yards in this development are actually at minimum 6.72 meters, so they're almost at 7 meters. There's just a small portion in the back, southwest corner that kind of backs on to the public school, that drops down to 6.39 meters. So majority of it is close to meeting the intent of the original zoning, and there's only really a small portion that isn't. But I do agree that as situations evolve, as planning evolves, as you start seeing different types of applications coming into the municipality, that's a good opportunity to step back and look at your regulations and say, do we need to update regulations to make sure that we're requiring visitor parking, that we're getting an end result product that we all believe is desirable for the township.
Okay.
I know I kind of give you
No, I appreciate that. No, I do appreciate that. Now this question might be more for site plan, but it's been raised a couple of times, of course, through the letters that, from a student and child safety standpoint. And I guess I'm thinking, access to the school, if I live in that complex that they're proposing, it looks like, am I going to have to walk out Nicholson, down Gilmore, down to Beach to go to the school? There's not going to be any access from that complex, like a gate or anything, a walkway from there to the school. No. Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So that has been brought up with the school board, and they prefer not to have an access directly from a private site onto their lands.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, I think that, and then I had the same question about the snow removal, but that is good that it's going to have to be a private enterprise that deals with that. I think that was all I had at this point. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we'll deal with the motion, the recommendation one way or the other when we come out of the public meeting, which I will ask for right now. So we need to have a motion to reconvene our regular meeting. Oh, sorry, Dan, did you want to add something?
You may want to ask if the proponent wants to speak to the proposal.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yep, we've got Melanie has joined us, and as well as Jason Johnson from Dillon. Melanie, is there anything that you wanted to add to the application presentation? Sorry, I should have asked you earlier.
It's okay. Thank you. No, nothing. We're in agreement with the recommendation and are here. Well, we were here just to answer any questions if there were any.
Okay. So with that in mind, did council or the committee have any questions for Melanie at this point? No. Okay. Thanks very much. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting. If I can get a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. And all opposed? And that's carried. So at this point, you've got two recommendations. We'll deal with them separately. So the first recommendation has to do with the Damon property. Let me just pull that one up, sorry. And of course, it doesn't want to, my iPad doesn't want to pull up that report. Okay, so,
sorry, Kathy.
Yep.
Just needs to be a verbal motion.
A verbal motion. Yeah. Yeah. So the obviously the recommendation is to approve the zoning bylaw amendment for, and this is for the Damon property. So if I can get a mover and a seconder, or for that, Councillor Westman, and I assume that's to approve the recommendation. Okay, and a seconder for this one, Councillor Regan. And any further discussion? All opposed? And that's carried. And then moving on to the one that we just discussed with Ridge Crossing. As you know, the recommendation is to approve the application, the zoning bylaw amendment. So I would ask for a motion at this stage for that. Deputy Mayor Manders, and is that to accept the recommendation? And that is to accept the recommendation. And a seconder for that, please.
I'll second.
Councillor Regan. And that's for Ridge Crossing. Just making my notes here. And any further discussion? All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And I think that's it for this planning at this point. So we will move on into the minutes for February 2nd. And I trust that you've had opportunity to review them, and if there is not anything to be amended, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes as circulated. Councillor Regan and a seconder. Councillor Mastarakis. All opposed, and those are carried. Business arising from the minutes, there wasn't anything that was added to it, and I don't think, unless any councillor members had anything that they wanted to add from the last minute onto business arising. Councillor Regan.
Sorry, I didn't want to add, Madam Mayor, but may I ask about the first one, the affordable housing? It says staff to provide information and options for consideration. I just didn't know if there was an update on that, or is it appropriate to ask at this time?
Ron?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Regan. That is kind of on our to-do list. So we're hoping to be able to get a report to council at some point with regard to what our options are and how council can encourage affordable housing. Part of that, I believe, will be resolved with the new official plan that's coming forward. I think there are going to be some policies in there whereby council can encourage social housing and affordable housing. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Ron. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Just to add to that, I'm hoping staff, because I believe it'll be interesting in our community with us being a bedroom community, what the mathematics of affordable for housing and rental. And I'm hoping our staff will be able to just to come back with that, because I think we'll be surprised at what's considered affordable for our community and their the salary base in our community for rents and purchasing. I mean, that's what interests me too, because I think anyways, that's what interests me.
I just always want to whenever we have this discussion, there is a difference between affordable housing and social housing. And we have to, and whether you want to call affordable or attainable, that goes back and forth, but there is a difference between social housing and that. Okay.
Just to be clear, I'm talking affordable housing, nothing to do with social housing. I've never brought it up.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to correspondence. Now, nothing has been highlighted by staff, and there wasn't anything necessarily that jumped out at me, but maybe there was something when you reviewed the list of correspondence and read the letters that were received that you wanted discussed. If so, then raise your hand and we'll pull them. Seeing none, then if I could get a motion to accept the correspondence for information, please. Mover and seconder. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All opposed? Those are accepted. Committee reports. CEDC. Lisa.
Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night at 6:30.
Okay. Blue water recycling. Nothing?
No, nothing, no meeting yet, no.
Lake Huron, we don't meet until March. Fire boards, the Lucan Fire Board met last week, but I imagine the next meeting, the minutes will be in there to discuss, and the Grant Fire Board meets on Thursday. So, ABCA and Upper Thames, Councillor Westman.
Yeah, we have our annual general meeting for both boards. Unfortunately, they're both scheduled for Thursday morning. So after some discussion with the CAO, I've decided to attend the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board general meeting because I represent both Thames Centre and Lucan Biddulph. So I want to make sure that Thames Centre is represented in that as well. I've spoken with the Sawville Bayfield, and I'll be getting fully briefed on the meeting. I don't know that there's a whole lot of big deal type of things that'll need to be approved, but I've started reading through it, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of surprises there, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I'll have a report for next meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation, Paul. Oh, he's off camera, but I don't think that they haven't met.
No, we had to postpone our meeting. We didn't really have much with the lockdown going on, so the next meeting is scheduled for March 3rd.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving into staff reports. Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report before council tonight is with regards to the changes to the committee and working group format. And as council is well aware, for the last few years, we've been using a working group format for both updating of policies as well as assisting the treasurer with annual budgets and financial monitoring. And as per the education and training session held with Nigel Belchamber on Friday, January 29th, we learned a few things, not the least of which Lucan Biddulph may wish to formalize a proper finance committee with advertised published agendas and minutes on the township's website. All appointed committees such as Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, which is PRAC, and the Economic Development Committee should be publishing their agendas and minutes on the township's website. The Lucan Biddulph Fire Area Board and the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board meeting agendas and minutes should be advertised and published on the township's website as well. Now, just to be clear, on those two, we actually, the minutes that are taken during those meetings are brought forward to the next council meeting. So they are kind of on there. So it's just not as easy to, it's not searchable really. It's rather cumbersome. So, and then the last one, it was clear from Mr. Belchamber that members of council shouldn't be involved in the drafting of policy, as that is a staff function. So just a little more information. Staff are working with counterparts from other lower tiers in the County of Middlesex. So we're switching from the e-agenda, which is not being supported anymore from a software standpoint, and we're transitioning over to a software called eScribe. The new software is used in compiling all reports, correspondence, bylaws, etc. for meeting agendas. The software automatically uploads the completed meeting agenda packages to the website. This changeover is estimated to be complete by September 1st of this year. And if you go on some of the other lower tier websites who are already using it, Temp Center comes to mind. It's nicely laid out, formatted. So we are trying to copy that. Our Economic Development Officer and Communications Officer, Lisa DeBoer, is working with the County Middlesex IT Department with regards to the new Lucan Biddulph website. The new website will mirror what other municipal websites look like in the county and make it easier for residents to find meeting agendas and minutes. She actually said, or Lisa actually said, that's supposed to be up and live by the end of the month. I give her a little more time than that, just to be on the safe side. We all know what it's like working with technology. So I said within the next few months anyway. So as far as impacts to budget, there's no impacts to budget to make these changes other than some slight increase in staff time. And as far as the impact on strategic plan, while this matter does not align with any particular strategic priority, it does promote transparency and open local government. So as far as options, number one, there's always an option to do nothing. Number two, instruct staff to dissolve the policy working group and the finance working group. Number three, instruct staff to formally establish a finance committee, and you do that via an appointment bylaw and appointing them properly like we do all the other committees. Number four, instruct staff to ensure that all agendas and minutes are properly posted on the township's website. Or another option is if council has collectively some other wishes, then those wishes should be directed to staff. However, my recommendation is that council approve options number 2, 3, and 4 of the report. So, Madam Mayor, there's my report.
Okay, thank you for that, Ron. Questions, comments on Ron's report? Councillor Mastarakis.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So were we in breach of the Municipal Act in any of these committees, working groups?
I don't believe so, no.
No. And if council can't be on a policy committee, are any of those policies that were brought forward valid?
Well, I think you're getting into the legal end of it now, Mr. Councillor. But again, just to be clear, the working group does not make any decisions. Those decisions are made by council collectively at the council table. Okay, so the working group is strictly to assist staff.
Right, but we had a group. We had a group that wasn't you have, okay, the Leafs played a non-regulation game against the Canadiens. They won the game and now they want to count it towards regular season. So does this game count? I'm not in governance, as Mr. Bellchambers said, we're not elected as council members for our background experience. It's popularity and acclamation. So the question is, so if we had a committee that was formed, but
Not a committee.
or there was a working group, but I don't know what you call the name, I guess, but you had a working group that was formed to bring forward policies, but there was 2 counselors on that can't bring forward policies or allowed to assist in policies. So what did Nigel Bellchambers say about that? Can we get some comments back from him?
No, I think the suggestion was by Nigel was that it was inappropriate to have members of council on that working group to assist staff. So it should be totally up to staff. So that's why the recommendation, you'll notice, says that instruct staff to dissolve the policy working group. So that's why that recommendation is what it is. So, but again, to be clear, there's no decisions made at that stage. There's only 2 out of 5 members of council there. So in fact, they can't make a decision. So that's why it's advanced to the members of council in an open session of council for approval.
Yeah, I know at our session with Nigel, he mentioned there were still gaps in the policies that we had approved in a couple of policies. So are you going to address those gaps that he brought up
which policies are you referring to?
He mentioned a code of conduct and he added something, I believe, to the respective workplace policy. So there was, so he did bring up those. So there were gaps in those policies from what I understand. It would be actually, for all these changes, I would have expected that, I would have hoped that Nigel Bellchamber, with his experience and background, would have spoke to us at council. It would have been great for the municipality to understand how we got here, what the expectations are of staff and council in this regard, and how this better ensures transparency, accountability, and integrity.
Well, I want to be clear from my standpoint. There's no issue with regards to transparency or clarity. Those policies are adopted by council in an open session of council. So I take a bit of exception with that language. I don't think there's any non-transparent action going on. I think we're trying to move the municipality forward by serving the taxpayers. And I don't see where we aren't serving the taxpayers in that regard.
Well, maybe it wasn't clear. All I'm saying is how this is going, and you mentioned it's going to greater transparency, right? In your statement, how to improve based on our goals. All these changes are doing that. So I would have liked to hear from Nigel. He's the expert in governance. I'm not, on what happened. Why are we making these changes directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak? Yeah, for me, it'd be great education for us. We brought Mr. Woodward in by Zoom to talk to us about how we vote in Zoom as councillors. I would have thought, for me on the governance side, personally, this is at a greater level of importance in that regard. But those are my thoughts. I'm not clear on those items. I think this report is short of what I would have expected on these items, truthfully, personally. That's my opinion. And I still think there's gaps on the policy side, and I'm not sure, and I want to put on record, I'm not sure if they are up to snuff, because what does that mean? I don't know on the governance side. I defer to Nigel Bellchamber on what does that mean if councillors can't be part of the process, but we're part of the process, and we still have gaps in policies that we've approved. So for me, there's a lot of gaps to this. I would like more information personally.
Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, no, I'm somewhat satisfied. I mean, I didn't think Nigel said we can't, that it's more that it's best practice, but I was part of the policy group with Madam Mayor. then not group, just a working group. And I really found I'm very disappointed actually that we're maybe even heading this way. I found the informal groups, working groups that can just brainstorm in an informal way with staff to help our small rural community, I thought was really good. And it's unfortunate to potentially change it to more formal, I find. I mean, I thought, really last year, Peter was with me on the budget committee or again, working group. I thought the brainstorming was good. Me and Daniel this year, just again, informal, giving input, cannot give any direction, cannot make any decisions. It's just trying to make our community a better place to live, policy, better place to work. Cannot, again, we put up all our hands, three of us, for the policy, for budget, for Bacon Fest, all three of us. I mean, Peter brought up some great ideas on the policies that were presented to us before we voted on them, after we voted on them. I mean, to me, I just think again, to me, everything's about going, moving forward. I mean, I still reflect on when we talk about best practices for Ontario municipalities. We're again different than Hamilton, Scarborough, and the big cities. I mean, I reflect on these comments that Ron's changing to is bigger municipality. I reflect on the judge when we had a severance that we wanted. She was comparing the density across the road from Haskell's funeral to Scarborough and Hamilton. I could have lost my mind. I mean, we want to sit here and say, that compare Scarborough and Hamilton to a property across the road from Haskell's funeral. And we're talking here about just informal brainstorming working groups that cannot move business forward or make decisions. And I very disappointed actually that we're even heading this way. I thought Peter, being a new council member, and Daniel, this has been great experience for everybody to not be put in a position where you're talking where it could lead to a decision of moving business forward. And it's I don't know. I'm very satisfied with the report, that with the discussion we've had on policy, that the vote we had of three of us when it come forward, I'm satisfied. So my comments.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So when we had the training, and I understand what you're saying, Councillor, but with the working groups and because I've been on all of them, but I've always thought like the opportunity to, and again, we don't make decisions on any of those. So we're like being part of the process. I've just found it very valuable, but I don't recall, and this is just me, but I don't recall saying that Nigel saying that it was wrong, or that it might have been, like, when because you raise a good point, Councillor Master-Atkins, about if we've come up with anything. If we've come up with anything of those still sort of in effect, but I think the issue was, and this is what I think I remember, is that we didn't move any of that business forward. It was all everything's brought to council. It all stops with the five of us. That's what I thought. So, and again, it might be a question of, I don't know, maybe it's just a question of semantics of what we call them. But again, the report, to me, when I read the report, this report actually suggests that we are taking steps to make it more formalized. So again, it might be just part of the fact that we're, a smaller community. We're going to be becoming a bigger community. Might be part of the growing pains. But again, I don't really recall, and I'll stand corrected, but I don't really recall him saying anything that it was, like the wrong thing to do. It just we might want to relook at it and maybe update this. That's just my impression. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Council.
Madam Mayor, just a follow up through you. I remember the discussion started, and then I believe, Madam Mayor, you said, let's take that offline in regards to the committees. But it's recorded, I think, anyways, from what I recall from discussion, but you can correct me. But I think you said, let's take that matter offline in the meeting, and we did stop the discussion, but don't quote me on it. I think it was recorded anyways. So you guys can go back and review and see where.
When was that?
During our training, January 29th. Nice. It could be totally wrong. Anyways, we're getting into the weeds here. We shouldn't be. Anyways, we've got the proposal here from staff.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Westman.
Well, I'm the old guy, been around longer than other members of council, put together pretty much. So my history with working groups and with subcommittees and committees of council is there's never really been an issue with transparency that I have ever seen. I mean, everything that is discussed at these committees is brought forward to council if there's decisions that need to be made, and we 5 are the ones who make the decisions on that at open council in view of the public. Minutes are made available to the public, and we have open discussion. And I mean, sure, there's always room for us to kind of keep up with the times and move forward. If there's a need for change, then we can make that change. I want to reiterate that we are not Toronto or Hamilton or London or even St. Mary's. We're a smaller community, and we function quite well in these small think tanks, these groups that work together of ratepayers and citizens and members of council and members of staff. We enjoy a unique bond in the community. When we go to conferences and we speak with other councillors and staff members from other municipalities, I can hold my head very high and very proud to speak to the type of community that we live in, the type of council that we have, and the closeness and the professionalism that we share here. So I think, you know, the report is good, and you know, I can certainly agree to the recommendations if that's what we need to do to kind of tweak things and get forward, move forward. So I kind of take exception to there being a question of whether we're being correct or not here. I don't believe I've ever had anyone tell us that we're doing it wrong. And so I want to just move forward and let's keep our community true to itself.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or follow-up on this? I would say that I think that it is a step in the, shoot, sorry, I just lost my memo there in front of me. In the right direction to formalize the working group. It's no secret with the finance working group, subcommittee, whatever you want to call it. It was always, that was a suggestion that I had brought up when I became mayor about how we could streamline the budget process. Of course, it was never a way to hide anything or not be transparent. It's always been very open, and everybody's been very well aware of the process. And if we have to formalize it through the appointment bylaw, then I think that that's a good step forward. You know, I think that there's some merit in saying that we're not Toronto and we're not Hamilton and we're not Scarborough. Absolutely. There is, you know, as everyone has said, there's uniqueness to being a small council. That being said, we still do have to answer to being transparent and open with our constituents. And I would echo what Councillor Westman has said. I don't believe that we've ever been offside of that. But if there's a way to formalize it and make it, you know, more, for lack of a better word, legitimate, then I think that this is a good step forward. So with that, there is a provided motion in the package that we will deal with at the end of the evening on this. So you can think about this some more as the meeting goes on. Did you have anything else, Ron?
Sorry, Madam, not at this time. No.
Okay. Tina, did you have anything from your office?
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. There is a bylaw included later on. It's an appointment of staff bylaw. Just to let everyone know, the building department has added a new employee through Middlesex Center, Josh Ransom. So the appointment bylaw appoints him as one of our building inspectors. And just a reminder that the LPAT case management conference is scheduled for February 26th. That is open for members or public to view. So I will forward the link to that if anyone's interested in watching that online.
Great. Thank you very much. Finance, Catherine.
Thank you. Good evening. Today I have a report in front of you. The purpose of it is to outline the budget and to table it, the draft 2021 budget. And just want to ask council to take the time to review it, as well as the public to review it. All the details are in the attachments, so line by line. And if you have any questions, then to email them to me based on the time frame that I have indicated in the recommendation. And we want to have a formalized public meeting on March 2nd before the regular council meeting. So if I have the questions, I can bring them forward and discuss those at that meeting if I receive them in time. So all the details are there. So please call me or send me an email.
Deputy Mayor, you have a...
Yeah, no, just when we were in our working group brainstorming, trying to come up with ideas for our community, we had talked about on the water side, and maybe Jeff talked about just making sure when we were installing the water meters, we're really trying to make sure all our costs were covered, and just making sure the components and the install, the potential that'd be going up. Is that part of the things coming forward, or did I miss that? And I should have read it better.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So, and through the mayor, that's one of the things we're going to bring up when we do talk about budgets for sure. But some of that falls under the fees rather than the budgets. But yeah, we're going to, especially on the water and wastewater side of things, touch on the revenues and of course the expenses. But you're exactly right, Deputy Mayor. That will be one of the things we do talk about.
And then the other thing, our working group, when we were brainstorming, thinking of ways to save money for the community, was the water. We talked about how maybe it's a missed expense when a home builder is building a house and maybe applying a water fee to the builder. Again, that was great discussion. Is that something too that'll be being brought forward? It'll come back to council to vote on, but we talked about it just and it's brainstorming there. Great.
We've actually built in some of that into the budget numbers. When we go through the revenue each line, I'll point out exactly where that falls, and we'll have a discussion on that. But yes to that question.
No, that's first time that's been left open. Amazing for years, unnoticed until we talked and brainstormed and discussed that. That was very good. Thank you.
And some of those things too, so I mentioned in the report with the changes for the water and sewer rates, that's all been communicated through that notice of the public meeting that's going to happen on March 2nd at 6:30. So a lot of those points have already been incorporated into this budget that you can see in that report, in my report as well.
Questions for Catherine on this? Just remember, we're not discussing the budget tonight. This is just laying it out. Councillor Regan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Catherine, I was just wondering, and I may have missed it. I just got a couple of text messages just from residents who just want to know how and when they can review and look at the budget and where they can find it, please.
Through the mayor. The details are attached to the report in the agenda. So if they pull up the agenda, you can click on the report, and also the draft details are there in a PDF format. And then if they have any questions or comments, then they can email them to myself before the February 26th, I believe I have in my recommendation. And then we can discuss and answer those at the March 2nd meeting. I believe if that's the process council would like to take.
Lisa, did you comment?
Thank you.
Lisa?
Yeah, sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Regan, we will do social media now that this report has come to council, just letting people know that this is the budget, where to find it, comments, those sort of things. So it just won't be in the agenda where, maybe the majority of people won't see it. And so we'll do some public education on this as well.
Thank you.
Could we do a newsletter with it as well, just for those residents that aren't on social media that might be interested in the budget?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a newsletter gonna go out tomorrow, so I'll amend that.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for Catherine on this? Just a reminder to council that, of course, when it comes to council, we're not going line by line. So again, now is your opportunity to go line by line and do that. And if you see that the pencil budget has gone from $10 to $100 and you've got concern with that, those are the types of questions we need to ask. So it's your responsibility to go line by line. And then we'll deal with the recommendations and the draft as it's presented on the 2nd. Okay. Do you have anything else, Catherine?
No, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, planning. Again, Dan.
Through you, Mayor, to members of council. So attached to the agenda tonight is a bylaw. It's Bylaw 13-2021, which is an execution of a site plan agreement for Colden Contracting Limited. And it's with specific regard to 1020 Heenan Court, which is a site plan agreement application for development of a 4-unit industrial development in the Heenan Court industrial subdivision, so phase 1 of Lucan's industrial subdivision. The site plan agreement has been prepared for council consideration, which does include a number of requirements which look at specifically access, parking, grading, servicing, storm, as well as elevations are attached and landscaping requirements. Staff are satisfied that the site plan that is signed off does meet the requirements of the zoning provisions, and securing the amount of $35,000, which is 50% of project cost for the infrastructure, has been secured at date. So with that said, we are recommending that the site plan approval be granted for the lands owned by Colden Contracting Limited, or Tom Schofield, which is located at 1020 Heenan Court. And I'm certainly available to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, any questions for Dan on this one, on this report? And just, is the recommendation in the motions? No, it's not. We need I think a motion, correct? Yeah. I'm just looking to Tina on that. Okay. So if there's not any questions or comments, then I would entertain a motion to either approve or not approve the recommendation from the planner. Councillor Regan.
Motion to approve the recommendation from the planner. Yeah.
To approve. So, and a seconder for that. Deputy Mayor. And all opposed. And that's carried. Public Works, Jeff. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. Good evening, Madam Mayor. My report tonight is on the Frank Street reconstruction project. We did receive our tenders back, and on this project, it's a carryover from 2020. We ended up receiving 10 bids overall, which was a nice to see. That was encouraging that companies were out there were bidding. Overall, all 10 are within 12% of one another, and the lowest 3 tenders are within 3% of one another. So it was nice to see. So Elgin Construction is the low bid that we received. Dylan Consulting, who did the tender and the design and the tendering of it, did review all 10, but it also reviewed the lowest one to ensure that there was the pricing was reasonable and comparable to our estimates. And they came back and that they agreed that there was no issues with the tender that Elgin put forward. And they also, through their letter, recommended that the ability and the experience of Elgin did meet criteria of proceeding with accepting the low bid. So as that's part of it, I would, as recommended in my report, that council do accept the low bid of Elgin Construction for the reconstruction of the Frank Street project.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. Any questions? It's exciting that this tender is actually going to be awarded. It seems we've been talking about it for a long time. Councillor Regan, did you have a question?
I do. May I thank you, Madam Mayor? Jeff, I was just wondering, so, and I see the differences in the bids, and if my math's right, it's about $90,000. And it just, if I was to explain to a resident, if they ask me, how do we ensure that, because there's quite a difference in the bids, how do we ensure that tender, the conditions of the tender are met? What's the safeguards that we have for that?
And through the mayor, it's a good question. So one of the things on a project this size we want to do is make sure that the tender that comes back in, all the documentation is in place, the math is correct, and the documentation is in place. With a tender of this such, there will be a security in place with it when we go with the project, and then whether it's Dylan or consulting, whoever issued the tender will review it, the design, and make sure that the tender does qualify to meet the work that they say is going to be done. And then once we're at that point, it is a legal document. So once we proceed into the construction side of things, we just like that, they'll have the ability to bill us for what they're tendering. We have the right to make sure that the work is done to what we're asking. So it's a legal document that we can follow up in.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, so there's a motion later on that we can deal with it. Do you have anything else, Jeff?
A couple of really nothing too wild and crazy. We met with BM Ross last week on the expansion and the class for the EA. I sent the presentation around to council. I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to kind of review that, or I found it very interesting, very exciting. And if at any time anybody has any questions, just let me know on that. I think one of the biggest things, I think in my email, I said over the next little while that council will be part of that decision, is we'll have to determine on the size of the expansion and the number of trains that will go in. And there'll be lots of information come through on that over the next little while. And with the official plan and the master servicing study, all this is going to come together and hopefully give us a picture of where we're moving forward with that. So OGRAs next week. I was saying to Ron today, some of the speakers look really it looks good. So pretty excited with that. And then the only other thing I just want to touch base, the ABCA is having a flood emergency meeting on February the 26th, and I've signed up to attend to that on behalf of Lucan Biddulph. So other than that, that's it. Just the weather. Staff have been working at the weather issues out there, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks so much. Certainly the last little bit, lots of snow, and it doesn't look like we're out of it yet. Looks like it's still coming this week. So make sure you thank the guys for all the work that they do for their roads to keep them safe and make sure that we can all get to where we need to be. Parks and Rec, Paul.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. The first report in front of you tonight, we have received funding for a portion of the community forest that was presented to council previously. After talking with the ABCA, when it comes to funding deadlines and purchasing deadlines for trees and so forth, we're suggesting bringing forward a phased approach to this project. I know we discussed reviewing this project in the future when we knew more about funding. So the first phase would be the naturalized area. It's about 4 to 5 acres. And the funding has been approved for that. It is about $10,876.25. And the funding needs to be committed to by March 1st. And so we can have, we need to have plants ordered for the spring. Obviously, phase 2, once we know funding on that, I know Tree Canada funding is supposed to make an announcement in March, but the school and all that wouldn't happen obviously right now with COVID anyway. So we will bring that back to council to discuss once we know more about that. But for right now, we would like, if council wishes, to go forward with the phase 1 at least, which is the naturalized windbreak area.
Okay, questions for Paul on this project? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I think this is great. I'm very excited about it. I can't certainly speak for all of scouting and guiding, but I can say that that's something we do. And if it's possible with COVID restrictions or however we can manage this, I would like to commit that our scouting and guides will very likely want to get involved and be a part of planting these trees in any way we can, or be a part of it. So just keep us informed, and we'll certainly do what we can to organize some youth to get out there and build some memories and plant some trees.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Paul on this report? I just have one or two. I mean, we were all, I think, you know, quite impressed with the report that you had proposed to us. I guess it was before Christmas now, and about the trees and using that area as a public space and growing that into it. And I think it's encouraging. And I'm not saying no to the trees, but I do think I just want to caution staff that, or excuse me, caution council that, I mean, there will be costs that we will incur once we take this on, and it'll be, you know, in it, you know, there's the entry and parking area. Well, we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know the cost of that, of when it comes time to do that. So we have to be mindful of, you know, as we grow this type of infrastructure and offer this, that there will be reoccurring costs that we will have to take on as this does grow. I think it is exciting. I think it's it will make a great area, and I like the 1 square that you've got in there, the school and community planting area. You know, it encourages community involvement and all that. The commemorative woods, I think there's great potential, but we also have to understand that the more we do with this, that there will be costs that we will incur as it goes on. And that's all I wanted to say to that. And your next report, Paul?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next report is discussing, previously we discussed utilizing Perfect Mind software. This originally was brought up during capital costs. However, we feel that this could be utilized using the efficiency money. And as North Middlesex is already moving forward, we don't have a lot of activity going on right now. Now might be the ideal time to start doing the setup, as well as we could do some cost sharing with North Middlesex. Should there be some implementation costs for project managers coming down, we could share those costs. So we would like to move forward with implementing the software, utilizing the efficiency money.
Questions or comments on this report? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Paul, just, sorry, what system are we using now?
Currently, we're using Keystone. It's a very old system. In fact, I believe we've received our final update. They're not going to be updating it anymore. A lot of the implementation is through staff. This would allow an online interface for residents to actually go online, see what the availability is. They could do their own bookings. We would approve them, obviously. And then this also can improve our communication. So say with this program, if I wanted to send out an email to everyone who rents ice from us, I could just compose it, and it can do that, as well as it can do reports. If we want to gather up information on, how many people rent the hall from us, how often, what's the most common, we can bring those reports forward using this program. So efficient wise, it would really cut down a lot of our administration.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted.
Any other questions or comments for Paul on this report? Okay, and I believe the recommendations are dealt with at the end. Did you have anything else, Paul?
Nothing right now. Obviously, with the return to red today, we are cautiously moving forward, slowly reintroducing some rentals to our halls, and we're being cautiously optimistic, as you said earlier.
Deputy Mayor.
Just Paul, what's the ice again situation? I had a resident ask me, so where is it, the pad now? Where is it going? And can you just brief me again on that? My apologies. I should know, but I just, yeah.
No, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Currently we don't have the ice installed at the Lucan Arena. We have a potential renter that's looking to book 50 to 55 hours of ice from basically as soon as he can until August, the end of August. So it almost equate to a second hockey season for us. We won't be doing that until we have a full signed agreement that on those hours to make it worth our while.
And then any time on, I guess the reason I'm asking, I guess, is I got to, I referred him to you. Well, just Rod Johnson had called me about baseball, and just, is the arena, baseball, was wondering about practices in the pad. And I said, I kind of thought, God, I'm not sure if the ice is going back in or not. So when is there any time that you'll know whether the renter is going to commit or not? I know is it because of now that we're in this color, is that satisfactory now to proceed with the agreement that we're in a red?
It is, and the previous discussion I had was I didn't want to plan anything until at least March 1st, because during this downtime I was using it to do some work in our refrigeration plant that we'd normally do in the summertime. So March 1st is our ideal start date. I did actually talk with the head of baseball today, and they're very unsure of the restrictions. Obviously, indoor is more restrictive than outdoor. So I don't believe their intention is to do anything indoor this year as they have in previous years, hoping for obviously a nice dry spring. Mm-hmm. It has not been good the last few springs, but with the moving of, I believe a lot of AAA hockey has moved their tryouts to potentially September. So that's going to free up some kids for early spring tryouts. So they're hoping that's going to work on their advantage. And they're still looking at what they're going to do. There's still a lot of unknowns for them.
Solidifying that rental will be great news, because then it's easier for obviously you to plan and advertise that ice is available. I do think it's good for our community when it can be officially solidified and announced we're going to have ice or we're not, and then the pad is available for whatever you can use it for. So okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Paul? Okay, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a report in front of you between Paul and myself regarding a Hydro One community grant. This is a new grant, so we apologize for the last minute request of council, but this is something we were presented with kind of last minute. So we discussed as staff and kind of brainstorm around some ideas. Again, like I say, this is a grant, so that we're not required matching funds. It's a straight application. So we given kind of their theme of things that they look for, we kind of came up with the idea of some of those outdoor exercise equipment that you see in the Kamoka Wellness Center has some, Goderich has some. So we thought maybe that would fit well with this grant, and we kind of got a rough quote from a company. Paul grabbed that for us. And we can do this if we apply for the full 25,000 and kind of create some community well-being spaces, and it fits with a couple of our strategic plan items. And like I said, there's no risk to us really at this point. We don't need matching funds or anything. So if we get it, it's a full-on just a grant. And like I said, it's due February 19th, so it's a little quick turnaround for the end of this week to get that in. So just kind of looking for council's approval that staff move forward with this, or just some comments on the application itself.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Questions or comments on this report? Okay, I think too, with the, isn't this part, it fits in with the recreational master plan too, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as the strategic plan. Yeah. Okay, anything else, Lisa?
Just a quick little update again, the CIP, we're still kind of figuring out a little draft. I met with the planners this morning. We've given them some feedback for them to amend a little bit again before we move forward with. The first would be an open house. So that we're looking at mid-March at this point for an open house. So we'll keep you posted. Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on, or I guess I should say, any other questions for Lisa? Okay, moving on, councillors' comments. Councillor Westman.
Just a couple things in light of the little bit of Mother Nature's assertion of her dominance today. Just wanted to say thank you to our public works crew and everybody who's putting all that extra effort in to keep the roads clear and the sidewalks clear. It's a big job, so I really appreciate that. And I know the folks around the community appreciate it too. I was reminded today, a friend of mine sent me an email from Emergency Management Ontario talking about your 3-day emergency kit. Our friends down in the south in Texas are really hit hard. They're not prepared for the kind of temperatures they're getting and the kind of weather. And it's sad that that situation is leading to people dying as a result of the weather. Now, we're not strangers to hard weather up here. Our homes are heated, are insulated. We're familiar with it, and we're a hardy bunch up here, but it's always a good idea to have a 3-day emergency kit in your home and a special emergency kit in your car to make sure that if you do get stranded on the road, you know what to do and you can survive no matter what the circumstances are. And that in your home that there's provisions and blankets and flashlights and things. If we do suffer a power outage, that everyone's prepared and safe and okay, that you understand that you don't use combustible fuel devices inside your home unless they are rated to be used indoors, that sort of thing. A few years ago, when my first year on council, we had a major power outage for almost 7 days it was, and a lot of people were able to move out of the community temporarily to take care of it. But when we went around door to door to some of the homes, there was people using, trying to heat with barbecues or with old kerosene heaters that weren't in good condition anymore. And we want to make sure that if we lose power here, because we had a big surge in Lucan that caused some homes to suffer some damage. If we do end up losing power, we certainly want to be prepared and educated to get through it as safely as possible. And we're not out of the woods yet. We may have additional storms and things that come before the end of winter. So that's my 2 cents on it. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you for that, Councillor Westman. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Regan.
I just have just one question, if I may, and then just a comment. So just for Lisa, I just was wondering if there was an update on the Lucan signs I've mentioned before. I didn't know if anything had happened since.
Oh, you're muted, Lisa.
Nothing yet. I have spoken to them because of the weather. They just really don't want to get out there and be putting paint on the sign right now. And then, of course, with the shutdown and stuff like that. So when I talked to them a couple of days ago, so they're just kind of waiting for the right temperature, and they will get out and repaint those hard to see areas.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. Just a comment, Madam Mayor, just if I may, just to piggyback on your point earlier about supporting our local businesses in our community. I think that's something that we should find a way to do it. I just wanted to report that tomorrow I will be seeing my stylist, Amber, at the Beauty House, and I shall no longer be a ragamuffin the next time you see me. Thank you.
Did you want to do that? Did you want to do that Facebook Live so we could see you go in and support the local business and make
I would be willing to, yes, of course, Madam Mayor, I will do that. I think Lisa can meet me there and we'll take care of that. Absolutely. Yes. I'm in. I think the deputy mayor wants to say something.
I'm just going to say, enjoy your half a day. I assume you're going to be a while.
COVID hair.
Thank you.
There you go. Any other councillor comments? I think I saw Councillor Mastarakis' hand up.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nigel Belchamber mentioned a good practice would be to bring our insurer in annually for risk management. So is that a motion I can make at this point? That usually I think they try to bring them before our renewal. So whenever our renewal is of our policy.
Ron, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. And it doesn't require a motion. And typically we do bring in once a year. Obviously COVID got in the way last year. So we can certainly, I'll talk to Tina and we can make arrangements for him to attend a future council meeting.
Do you happen to know when the renewal is up so that we can just kind of think about that in our time frame? So
Yes, our renewal date is September 1st. So we've got some time. Yep.
One more item. And Julie Overholt was going to come back for a discussion about the health and safety training and the audit that they were going to do at some point. What's information or timing on that?
Ron, yep.
If I may, Madam Mayor, so that's still in progress. The county has yet to approve the budget, where we will then, assuming it gets approved, which I expect it will. Once that gets formalized, then we will have access to the HR people and health and safety people at the county. So that's still a work in progress.
But wasn't Julie doing something separate from that?
With the WSB audit or something?
Yeah.
Concurrent. She's doing something concurrently, yes, with a group of other municipalities as well. Yeah. And
is there going to be an audit that I think we're going to get a free audit or something or down the road once she was completed?
I don't recall a free audit, but I think there was a cheaper rate. We'll put it that way. There were some economic incentives for doing these kinds of projects. So yes.
I believe, if I remember correctly, and I think it was going to be like, it would be a process. I thought maybe about 18 months maybe or so, or am I thinking of something else? But maybe to that point, maybe we could just ask for an update at some point, at least as to where she's at. She doesn't need to come and give a report, but just maybe where they're at. And then to Ron's point about the county budget, just so I update everybody on that, the budget actually, the budget committee is starting to meet this week, and then it will be tabled and presented on March the 9th. So that's any things that going on with the budget that affect us with the county, we'll know in March. That's when it'll be finalized. Okay. Did you have anything else? Any other comments, Councillor Master? That was it. Okay. Notices of motion. Okay, then we'll go into our motions and accounts paid. I just have to pull them up. Okay, resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. For January 2021, $708,837.68. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Mastarakis. And all opposed? That's carried. Okay, those for the minutes. Resolved that the council direct staff to proceed with option 2, 3, and 4 as presented in report number CAO-03-2021 regarding committee and working group format. A mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council received this report number FIN-02-2021 for information, and further that staff be instructed to schedule the formal public meeting for purposes of the 2021 budget for 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021, and publicize the public meeting via the township webpage, social media, and the electronic municipal sign at the municipal office. And further, that comments and questions from both council and the public in regards to the draft 2021 budget will be received by the treasurer up to 4:30 p.m. Thursday, February 25th, 2021. And can I get a mover and seconder for that one, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council authorizes staff to accept the tender from Elgin Construction for the Frank Street reconstruction project in the amount of $763,717.71, including HST. There were a lot of sevens in that. Mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, or I mean Councillor Mastarakis, I'm sorry, Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Regan, sorry. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council directs staff to proceed with phase 1 of the joint community forest restoration project with the Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority as presented by staff in report number PR-02-2021. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. And all opposed? And that's carried. And resolved that the council direct staff to proceed with implementation of the Perfect Mind software utilizing efficiency funds up to $12,000 as presented in report number PR-03-2021. A mover and seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders, Councillor Mastarakis. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council directs staff to apply for the Hydro One Community Fund for outdoor exercise equipment to be located throughout our park system as presented in report number EDC-02-2021. And can I get a mover and seconder for that one, please? Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 12-2021, appointment of staff bylaw, 13-2021, execution of site plan agreement for Colden Homes, 14-2021, the confirming bylaw, 202-2021 ZBA Ridge Crossing Townhomes Phase 2. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed, and that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 7:50 p.m. A mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman, Councillor Regan, all